This is a video about the reality of war, the purest reality of what war is. Driven by courage and heroism in the dreams of men, but fueled by hatred, sadness, and the ability to violently rip away the hopes of even the bravest soldier. The many truths in these images show the best of humanity, and that the Lord of War does not care about bravery, kindness, or heroism. They are all just words that fuel conflicts and are only repaid by humans themselves. When you thank the soldier for his sacrifices, when the brother in the trench smiles, still alive after being saved by his comrades, when you breathe a sigh of relief for another day with your heart still beating after the bombings. This is the story of a soldier named Taras, a man who raced against time and expectations with a single intention. The trenches of Evedivica grew colder and colder at the end of 2022. If the winter sucked the warmth from the earth, the bombings momentarily returned it with fire and violence. Little was said about the city in the news. Bakhmut was still the star of the conflict. Meanwhile, there were other places that harvested human lives in fertile fields. This city in eastern Ukraine was one of them. There, fighting proliferated and the story of what human beings are capable of was lived. It happened in other places, but in that trench on the way to Avdiivka, everything was recorded. War is a sea of sorrow, where waves of violence constantly try to sink ships made of courage. The strong winds passed over the faces of the men, leaving them increasingly pale with fear in the face of the terror that thickened day after day in Ukraine, seeing their brothers in arms perish or be taken from battle with bodies or souls torn apart. This is the recorded account of a man who sailed the sea of sorrow, defying the stormy winds with the goal of saving comrades lost in the terrible waves of the sea of death. Taras heard on the radio the news about his wounded brothers. Disturbed, he sat in the trench with his weapon in hand, listening to the Russian automatic grenade launcher grenades falling nearby. The cries for help on the radio mixed with the bursts of gunfire among the trees. Just ahead, Vitya, with the machine gun resting on the ground, turned to Taras.
What's happening there?
2 wounded.
Ours?
Yes.
Impatience grew as he heard his own words.
Vitya, let's go along the tree line.
Let's go along the tree line.
Stop fooling around, guys.
The legs moved, calling Vitya to follow along the tree line. Other comrades watched anxiously, worried about the enemy approaching. Taras left the rocket-propelled grenade in the trench, taking only the M4 for any need, while Vitya followed with the machine gun for support. The magazines were filled with 5.56 ammunition, ready to serve the country, and a brotherhood that made that moment unique. The sounds of the Russians' gunfire were still faint, but it was certain that the volume would increase in their ears and make their hearts tremble. Fear was part of a soldier's life, especially when the Russian waves swelled in their direction. The cold tension permeated the trench, filling the ditches with the clear sense of the loss of lives, memories, or the integrity of the soldier's soul. After all, war tore everything apart. Fire broke out along the defenses, lighting up between the trees in the midst of the sound of gunfire. The decision to leave the safety would change Taras's fate forever. His intention was what cynics would call questionable intelligence and what cowards would joke about while sitting on sofas. The Russian fire screamed and lit up among the trees, catching his attention. He flinched, but kept going, listening on the radio to the urgency of his comrades on the front line and how the dogs of death were sniffing out the wounded soldiers. The same fire that tore apart also forged. If there was no friendship, there was brotherhood. It wasn't simply liking a person or having an affinity with them. Wearing the same uniform, having your lives at risk with grenade and artillery explosions, Hearing enemy rounds whizzing over your heads while voices shouted over the radio, that was Brotherhood. It was knowing that there was a brother in arms by your side. That's what made Tara leave cover, knowing there were bonds tied by strong fists, calloused from holding a rifle or digging a trench. He needed to find his brothers, who were cornered by the drummers. When a rocket-propelled grenade exploded among the trees, his mind tried to warn him, but his heart melted the ice of fear and made his legs move forward. A blast in the woods made him throw himself to the ground. Relieved, he got up, still thinking about his comrades ahead. The sounds of gunfire grew more and more intense. On the horizon, the destruction made its presence known with fire, followed by smoke that continued to mark the evil. Something on the Russian side, maybe an armored vehicle, was blown up in the field, which gave him the strength to keep going. He didn't see the enemies, but the presence, noticeable only by the deadly sound of gunpowder exploding, made him stop. Fear, memories of family, recollections from the time of peace held his feet back. What filled his heart with energy and pumped blood into his legs to move was the Brotherhood. The explosions appeared suddenly, caught only by the corner of his eye as he pursued his goal. The sounds on the radio were filled with concern. The voices were shouting, warning that the Russians weren't stopping. The Ukrainian moved through the dry branches, responding to his brothers and worried about those lost ahead. Another rocket-propelled grenade exploded among the branches in the direction of the Russians. The enemy was getting closer and closer. The sense of urgency tried to push him forward. Training and survival instinct made him cautious, crouching at the edge of the tree line. Something exploded so close that he could hear death eagerly rubbing its skeletal hands. He kept going anyway, knowing when to duck and listening to the grenades now lighting his path during that macabre dawn. The need to move quickly grew as he heard the calls on the radio. The trench hourglass didn't have the glass shape of falling sand, but whether it was the rounds passing through the barrel or the blood flowing from an open wound, that was what his comrades up ahead were living through. Taras picked up the pace, seeing a spark on the horizon and fearing the worst. The fire was from something being hit, and the dogs of death must have smelled the scent of pain and heard one of the first murmurs of farewell in the air. He needed to be quick to find his brothers. The sense of urgency only grew. His steps brought him closer to his companions, but it still wasn't fast enough for the pace his heart desired. They needed him. His time was running out, counted precisely by every bullet that left the magazines. The two Ukrainians lying down, covering one of the flanks of the tree line, shouted, "Jesus! Jesus!"
I see you. Where are you?
I'm seeing!
Do you have charges?
Chargers!
Yes.
We arrived! We need more people here. Let's go! I'll crawl! Go get Roma! We'll cover you!
They quickly reported that 2 wounded men were ahead. Taras handed over his magazines, thinking about how to reach Roma, the first and closest of the wounded. His comrades said they would provide cover for the insane attempt to save his brother, cornered by the Russians ahead. He shouted for Vitya to come closer with the machine gun. His covering fire would be essential. Bring the damn machine gun. His hands, already hurt by the cold and the dry branches, touched the frozen ground, pushing his body toward his brother. His heart pounded in the rhythm of fear and courage, changing its tone as he got closer. Roma came into his line of sight, which made him ask a hopeful question in the midst of all the gunfire.
Roma, are you alive?
He finally reached out to touch his friend, and there he felt the last breaths of the one he had come to rescue. And by touching the one whose scent the hounds of death had sensed, he drew the attention of the Reaper. The suppressive fire hit him with a ricochet that sparked, announcing the arrival of a deadly visit to Taras's body. That shot made death salivate between its white jaws and move in to claim him. His vision began to darken as he moved, his body trying to understand amid the pain and blood loss what his fate would be.
Where is the damn machine gun? Why isn't it firing?
I'm hit! I'm hit!
Terrace, you're hit! Terrace, you're hit!
I'm hit! I'm hit!
Taras reported the situation on the radio, but deep down he already understood what his path was, the path of Rome and of the last wounded man who wouldn't even make it.
That's it. That's the end of my story.
Somewhere a period was placed at the end of a book. Whoever read it could interpret Taras's decisions however they wanted. But the great truth was that many would judge the end of that story with cynicism or destructive criticism, asserting their choices for various reasons. Among those same people there would be many who, if they were living the story of Roma, would see Taras's decisions differently. The soldier called for help. The weakened voice was filled with pain, mixed with the sound of the Russians' gunfire that was growing louder and louder.
Pull back! Pull back! The group will provide cover!
The soldier rolled on the cold ground, trying to reposition himself and find the strength to return to his friends, but the world kept getting darker and darker. The uniform he was proud of, the same one Rome wore, the clothing that gave them a sense of unity and set them apart from the enemy ahead, became soaked with the red that was common to all men in the world, no matter what leader they had or what orders they followed. The darkness became a stronger presence, and the pain began to turn into a diffuse warmth that faded away along with the light his eyes could no longer see. The camera was found later, and the footage ended up on the internet with the watermark of a Russian news agency. That's how they went viral. There are no known records without that symbol, which indicated a unique fate for Taras, Roma, and the third injured person. That trench in the direction of Avdiivka was lost, with more Ukrainian and Russian lives slipping away as the day began. War itself has never rewarded a man for his good deeds or intentions. Only the hearts of those who have been in battle or who have been defended by the sacrifice of fighters could recognize what the battlefield has never repaid and never will. The fire that forged brotherhood and courage did so as a side effect of its bitter intention to destroy.
Fall back, understood?